Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro Moros has sent a letter to the Spanish King Felipe VI, expressing indignation that Spain continues to celebrate the conquest of the Americas and calling for an apology for the genocide of indigenous peoples. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador announced on Thursday that an agreement has reached with Cuba to acquire its Abdala vaccine against COVID-19. A large explosion tore through a Shia mosque in the southern Afghan city of Kandahar during Friday prayers, causing heavy casualties. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your host, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro Moros has sent a letter to Spanish King Felipe VI, expressing indignation that Spain continues to celebrate the conquest of the Americas and calling for an apology for the genocide of indigenous peoples. In the letter, President Maduro calls for Spain to recognize the crimes of its colonial past and to work towards exposing the full historical truth of what the conquest of the Americas meant for the peoples. He also stresses that this is even more important today in light of the resurgence of supremacism and fascism that takes us back to the darkest periods of Imperial Europe. Maduro noticed that the emergence of far-right parties and narratives that attempt to minimize and falsify the events that occurred during the so-called conquest of the Americas are becoming increasingly common in Spain, fueling further xenophobia and discrimination against Latin Americans. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro Moros also denounced the use of hired criminal groups by the Colombian government of President Iván Duque, tasked with entering Venezuela to attack its electricity system.
To increase the quality and the capability of intelligence and counterintelligence to detect hired groups trained by the Colombian government of Iván Duque to attack the electrical system, hired groups, hitmen, with former police officers and ex-military men from Venezuela, from Colombia, with paramilitaries trained in Colombia with specific goals of attacking the electrical system and attacking strategic objectives in Venezuela, of trying to disrupt the electoral climate, the electoral panorama of the country. We have already talked about it, and I fully trust in the action capacity of all the 560 units of our National Bolivarian Armed Forces in perfect civic, military and police union.
El clima electoral, el panorama electoral del país.
And now we move on to other topics. Women in the Brazilian city of Rio de Janeiro protested against far-right President Jair Bolsonaro's decision to block a plan to distribute free sanitary products to girls, disadvantaged, and women. The move has been met with outrage throughout the country, where period poverty is estimated to keep 1 in 4 girls out of school. Bolsonaro vetoed part of the bill that will have provided sanitary products at no charge to groups including homeless people, prisoners, and teenage girls in state schools. It was expected to benefit 5.6 million women and girls and was part of a bigger package of laws to promote menstrual health, which has been approved by Brazilian legislators. In El Salvador, various sectors mobilized on Thursday to voice their demands. Veterans rallied to demand benefits and pension payments. Spokespersons recalled that at the end of the Civil War in 1992, the state promised it would support veterans, but 30 years later, their demands have not been met. Meanwhile, artists and cultural sector workers mobilized to demand that Congress reconsider the decree that suspends public events. Cuba is set to host the 11th session of the Joint Commission for the Collaboration with the Euro-Asian Economic Commission in November. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel explained that the meeting will run from November 4th to 7th in Havana, after having participated via video conference in the meeting of the Supreme Eurasian Economic Council on Thursday, made up of the heads of state and government of Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Armenia, and Kyrgyzstan, as well as Moldova, Uzbekistan, and Cuba, which have observer status to the organization. In his speech, the Cuban president pointed out that the joint action plan will be signed in Havana Havana, the implementation of which will allow for greater collaboration between the Eurasian Economic Commission and Cuba, both at the official level and in business circles. The president of Ecuador, Guillermo Lasso, admitted in a televised interview that he had concealed his wealth in tax havens. The Pandora Papers investigation, published by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalism, included President Lasso among the world leaders with offshore accounts. According to the data, Lasso was associated with 14 offshore companies and trusts in Panama, South Dakota, and Delaware. Most of these companies were dissolved back in 2017, but 2 trusts in South Dakota are allegedly still in use. Ecuador's legislature has entrusted the Constitutional Commission to investigate whether the president broke the law by violating the Ethics Pact, which prohibits candidates and public officials from hiding resources or assets in tax havens. In Honduras, a political alliance has been established between the Liberty and Refoundation Party and the Savior of Honduras Party as the country prepares for general elections at the end of November. The move sees the top opposition parties unite behind a single presidential candidate, the wife of former President Manuel Zelaya. Our correspondent, Gilda Silvestrucci, has the details.
The presidential formula of the Liberty and Refoundation Party took a turn. The presidential charter included Salvador Nasrallah as first designated and Xiomara Castro as presidential candidate. Today, this act reflects the will of the people to overthrow the dictatorship of the current administration, all in one united front. In the negotiations, the Savior of Honduras Party managed to secure 2 vice presidencies and the head of the National Congress.
We will rule together. Xiomara will be the president, but she will have me at her side as first designate, and we will make our decisions based on what is good for the people of Honduras, according to our government plans.
Both parties will work to deploy observers in all polling stations on the day of the vote to prevent similar acts as those seen in 2017, when they also ran as an alliance and denounced several irregularities in the electoral process.
How to succeed and guarantee victory is a difficult task, because the National Party is a dangerous force. There is no time to lose. We are 45 days away from the elections, and now it is necessary to unite in favor of Xiomara Castro de Zelaya.
According to polls, the 2 parties together have 30% of the population's support, representing an advantage over the current National Party administration with 20%.
What is important is that, together, we are going to take back the Republic, the lawful state and constitutional order. We are going to generate our democracy and economy.
Honduras had 13 candidates running for president, with 2 political forces deemed as favorites seek to clash once again: the Liberty and Refoundation Party and the ruling National Party, the latter of which has dominated the political landscape for the past 12 years.
Gilda Silvestrucci, Telesur Honduras.
And we'll be right back after this very short break. But first, let's watch a short clip that celebrates the World Day for the Rural Women. For them, a little homage from Telesur English. Welcome back to From the South. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador revealed this Thursday that an agreement was reached with the government of Cuba to acquire its Abdala vaccine against COVID-19. The Mexican head of state pointed out that the agreement is the result of the cooperative relationship with Cuba, especially in the medical field, and underlined that the two nations will continue to build on these relations. According to President López Obrador, the Cuban vaccine will initially be used to vaccinate those aged over 18. In August, Mexico's Federal Commission for Protection Against Health Risk issued a favorable opinion on Abdala to be considered as a vaccine for emergency use. Abdala was developed by Cuba's Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology.
There is an agreement with the Cuban government to acquire vaccines in Cuba, but it has not yet been possible to materialize it. But we do have a cooperative relationship with Cuba, especially in the medical field, and we will continue working together. And when I say especially in the medical field, it is because this is one of the points, but not only in the medical field. Mexico has very good relations with the government of Cuba, relations of cooperation and international solidarity.
South Africa has embarked on the development of Africa's first vaccine against the coronavirus in a groundbreaking drive to end the continent's life-threatening lack of COVID-19 vaccines. South African biotech company Afrigen, backed by the World Health Organization, is working to develop a resilient vaccine that will not need to be stored at ultra-cold temperatures, an unrealistic requirement in places where power cuts are a problem and temperatures are high. The project will use reverse engineering to recreate a formula close to the one used by the U.S. pharmaceutical company Moderna. The South African government has called for a temporary lifting of patients of COVID-19 vaccines so that low-dose countries can manufacture generic drugs locally at a lower cost. So far, the pharmaceutical giants have resisted these calls, but the Medicines Paid in Full, an unbacked organization, negotiates drug licenses with patient holders and also has entered into negotiations with Moderna in this case.
Basically, that is considered R&D, so there isn't any infringement of intellectual property, and in the process we learn how you make mRNA, how you scale it to be able to produce it at a scale that would be useful for clinical trials. So it's not massive volumes, it's basically to go into phase 1 clinical trial. There's a lot that we've learned in the pandemic, and it's highlighted just the inequities that exist, but it's also given such a driving force to say, for Africa to say, no, we can do it. Like there's major emerging economies, it's a growing continent, and we can do it.
And Burundi received its first COVID-19 vaccines on Thursday, which were donated by China's national pharmaceutical group, Sinopharm. The East African country, one of the last in the world to begin to inoculate its population, received 500,000 doses of the Sinopharm vaccine at a ceremony in the economic capital Bujumbura. The health ministry reported that the vaccination campaign will begin next week and will initially target healthcare providers, people aged over 60 or those with underlying health problems, as well as people traveling abroad and also volunteers. The country is also awaiting the arrival of doses from the World Bank at the end of the month. The vaccine drive accompanies other measures introduced as part of a new 6-month COVID-19 response plan in the country of 12 million people.
China highly appreciates the measures taken by the Burundian government against COVID-19 and will follow its efforts to accompany Burundian friends in the fight.
These vaccines are licensed by the WHO, and the ambassador also pointed out that vaccine does not replace hygiene and barrier measures. This is very important. I would also like to thank the Chinese people for other forms of cooperation in the field of health.
And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. A large explosion tore through a Shia mosque in the southern Afghan city of Kandahar during Friday prayers, causing heavy casualties. Preliminary reports point to a suicide bomber who entered to the mosque a week after a similar attack on Shiite worshippers at a mosque in the northern city of Kunduz that was claimed by the Islamic State group. Medical sources and a provincial official confirmed a toll of more than 30 people and around 53 injured, and at least 15 ambulances were rushing to and from the scene. Taliban special forces have secured the site and have asked people to donate blood to help the victims. Lebanese authorities have arrested 8 suspects linked to an attack on Thursday featuring sniper fire against peaceful demonstrators in Beirut, which left at least 6 dead and about 60 injured. According to media outlet Al Mayadeen, the Lebanese army reinforced its deployment in the area to contain the situation and arrested one sniper at the scene, who was found in one of the buildings from where the shooting was heard. Al Mayadeen's Beirut bureau chief stated that at least 4 gunmen fired from a building. The Lebanese army issued a statement on the events, explaining that the protesters were exposed to bursts of gunfire as they made their way through the city streets. Troops rushed the cordon off the area, and forces were deployed across nearby neighborhoods. Meanwhile, the Lebanese resistance movement Hezbollah and the Amal movement denounced the attacks on protesters who were rallying against what they claim is over cover-up of the truth behind the Beirut port blast. Lebanon's Interior Minister Bassam Mawali said there was no prior information on potential violence during the rally.
We did not have any information on this matter. On the contrary, we have been in contact with the organizers of the protest for 2 days, and they reassure us that the demonstration is a peaceful one. The crime was using weapons to snipe people. That is the main issue, and it has nothing to do with the protest. This peaceful demonstration has been priorly organized by attorneys and elite who have a certain demand in link with politics or another issue that you are all aware of.
In South Africa, a special forces task team stormed a building to free 2 ministers who were reportedly taken hostage during a public event. According to local media, over 50 people were arrested following clashes at the St. George's Conference Center in Irene, south of Pretoria, after a crowd of army veterans held Defense Minister Thandi Modise, her deputy, and the minister in the presidency hostage. Members of the Liberation Struggle War Veterans Group barricaded themselves in a room with the politicians in an alleged bid to have their demands met. The situation lasted for 3 hours. At least 3 people were injured during the storming, but none of the politicians involved were reported as casualties. Tunisian President Kais Saied chaired the first meeting of the country's new cabinet on Thursday, following his power grab in July. As part of the meeting, the president accused unnamed politicians of using refuge overseas to plot against the state, implicitly targeting one of his predecessors who is based in France. The comments came after former Tunisian President Monsef Marzouki addressed demonstrations against Saied in Paris last weekend, during which he urged the French government to reject any support for Saied's regime, whom he accused of having undertaken a coup. Saied sacked the government, froze parliament, and seized a range of powers on July 25th, moving later to rule by presidential decree before last month naming geologist Naim Labouren as prime minister. Now we address other topics. Severe storms swept across Greece on Thursday, flooding hundreds of homes in the capital Athens and prompting authorities to evacuate residents on Evia, the Greek island that suffered devastating wildfires over the summer. The storms battered the capital and other parts of the southern Greece, causing traffic disruptions and road closures. Authorities reported that firefighters in Athens received more than 300 calls from people asking for help to pump water out of their homes. Thousands of vehicles were stranded on flooded roads as their occupants had to walk through the water to safety. The government sent text messages to mobile phones in the affected areas asking the population to refrain from driving. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurienglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For Telesur English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.